Today I'll show you how to install Arch Linux on any PC like a true Gigachad. So I've been thinking of making more Linux content lately instead of normal Windows videos, and I thought what's a better way to start other than making a fresh install of Arch Linux and walking you through it. I'll try to give you a brief explanation of what's happening and what's the commands are actually doing. So I hope by the end of the video you have a good understanding of the commands and their functions rather than just straight up copy pasting. So if you're new to Linux, Arch Linux is a great way to start. It's like learning how to swim by diving headfirst into the ocean. If you can survive Arch Linux, you're gonna be able to survive any Linux distro. One more thing that I would like to note in here is most of the information in this video is coming from the Arch wiki. So if you really want to learn more on how to do specific things in Arch Linux, the Arch wiki is your best friend. It should be the first place that you look into since they have really good documentation and it's always up to date. So don't be an Ubuntu normie and don't be a Kali Linux normie. Learn how to actually use Linux. Alright, so to install it, first you're gonna head to Arch Linux downloads, and the first thing you're gonna realize, wait a minute, is it actually only 800 megabytes? And yes it is. Unlike the bloated Windows installer, which is like 5.5 gigabytes, you only need 800 megabytes to install Arch Linux. That's because by design, Arch Linux is almost as minimal as you can get. And then the beauty of it is you design the system as you install it. You choose what drivers you want, you choose what interface you want, you choose what apps you want. You almost get the minimum required packages just to have a Linux up and running, and then you choose and pick what drivers, what packages, and what interfaces you want. And if you really want, one of the best ways to install it, you can network boot it. You can get one of these small ultra light images, and then you can boot to this image over a network and it will pull all the latest package for you. But anyways, I'm gonna go with a ISO install, and that's because that's what most people are familiar with. So you can grab the torrent link, or you can go to any of these mirrors, they all should be the same, and you can verify that the image is fully intact by comparing it to one of these hashes. Once you've downloaded your image and you boot it into it, you're going to be presented to this screen. Go the first setting, Arch Linux install media, press enter. What it's doing now, it's actually booting into Arch Linux. So this is it. This is what Arch Linux is all about. This is a fully up and running live ISO of Arch. So unlike Windows, you're not booting to an installer, you're actually booting into Linux itself. And then we're gonna use this live environment to install Arch Linux on any system we want. So once you're booting, first thing first, always check you have internet connection. So I'm gonna ping to 111. And yes, we do have an internet connection, so that's good. Once you make sure you have an internet connection, you're gonna check for the drives. So type in lsblk. This will show you all the drives that are currently attached to your system, physical and virtual. So for example, this loop 0 device is a virtual device, but SDA is a physical drive. So I'm going to install my system on SDA, which is my physical drive. So the first thing that you may want to do is reformat the drive. So there's a very simple, easy command for that. It's called cfdisk, and then space, and give it the drive. So I'm going to give it dev SDA, because that's the drive that I want to install the system on. So that's the drive I'm going to reformat. And also you should probably know that by reformatting the drive, you're going to lose all your data. So I'm going to delete my old partitions in here. I'm going to delete the first one, and then I'm going to delete the second one. And for an AFI install, the minimum you're going to need is 2 partitions. You're going to need an AFI partition. AFI partition is where your bootloader is going to live and what your BIOS is going to boot into. And then you're going to need your system partition, which is going to be your root partition. So for an AFI partition, 0.5 gigabytes. You can type in 0.5 gigabytes and it should be enough. And then I'm going to give the rest of the disk space for the system partition. Now, one thing you're going to have to make sure before you continue is go back to the AFI partition, change type, and select an AFI system. Once you're done, double check your results and then select right and type in yes. This will reformat the drive, and doing so, it will remove your data. Let's type in yes. Nice and done. Click quit. Clear the screen. One thing you might be wondering at this point, where is the swap partition? The thing is, I'm not going to make a swap partition because I usually make swap files. I think swap files are much more easier to work with. It's much more easier to resize or remove. With a swap partition, if you have a swap partition and you want to make it larger, then you're going to have to edit one of your main partitions, take a portion out of that partition, and then merge it with the swap partition or reformat the partition again, which is kind of annoying. With a swap file, it's as easy as just making a new swap file that is just physically larger. So you don't have to worry about messing around with partitions and make sure everything is formatted correctly. And now we have 2 beautifully formatted drives. We're going to make a file system. So type in mkfs.fat space F32, and then choose your AFI partition. So it's going to be dev SDA1 for me. That's going to be my AFI partition. And then I'm going to format the other drive. I'm going to use ext4. So mkfs ext4 space dev SDA2. I'll say yes. Nice and done. Now that we formatted the drives, in order to use them, you have to mount them. So I'm going to mount the home drive first. Type in mount dev, the drive that I want to mount. So it's going to be SDA2. And I'm going to mount this and /MNT. Now that we mounted the drive, we can actually use it. I'm going to create a folder where we're going to mount the boot drive. So mkdir to make a new directory, /MNT, /boot. We create a directory named boot inside the mounted drive. Inside this directory, we're going to mount our boot drive. Mount /dev, /SDA, and mnt /boot. Enter. Then type in lsblk to double check. Again, your home drive should be mounted at mnt, and then your boot drive should be mounted at mnt/boot. If you made a mistake during this process, it's not a big deal. You can just type umount/a and it will unmount all these drives, and then you can remount them again. Now the drive is formatted, mounted, and now we are ready to install Arch Linux into it. So to do that, type in pack/strap space, then give it the location where the drive is mounted, so /mnt space, and then in the packages. So we're gonna need base devel, Linux firmware, Linux headers, and we're gonna use Vim because we are not normies. Type in enter. This will pull the packages from the internet and then install them to your mounted drive. Now it's nice and installed. After the installation process, we're going to make an fstab file. If you don't know what an fstab file is, it's a file where it tells your system where things should be mounted at. So it tells your system that home drive should be mounted in this location, boot drive should be mounted in this location, swap drive should be mounted in this location. So that's why it's necessary to have an fstab file. Now we're going to generate the fstab file. So type in gen fstab/u for UUID, and we're going to generate at mnt, and then we're going to place this generated file in mnt etc fstab. Press enter. Now we can actually switch to the Arch Linux that we just installed. So do that in arch root /mnt. This will switch the root from the live ISO to the Linux system that we just installed. Press enter. Now we are actually inside the installation. So now we're going to make a swap file. To do that, type in fallocate. The command is used to allocate a portion of your disk space to a specific file. So fallocate/l and then space, and then choose how much you want to allocate. I'm going to allocate 8 gigabytes, all caps. And I'm going to allocate this to /swapfile. So it's going to make a new file named swapfile, and it's going to allocate 8 gigabytes to it. Press enter. Now we made a file, we're going to have to change the permissions. So chmod 600, and we're going to change the permissions of the swap file. Now we're going to have to make the swap. So mkswap add swapfile. And now we made the swap file, swap on /swapfile. Done. Now we have to type in the fstab file to tell the system to use the swap file every time the system boots. To do that, we're gonna have to edit the fstab file, /c fstab, press enter, and then go to the bottom. I'm gonna make a comment. I'm gonna say this is swap file, new line. So first, the location of the file. So it's gonna be /swapfile, tab, and then where it should be mounted at. This one's not gonna be mounted because it's just a file, so it's gonna be none. Tab. The format of this file is gonna be swap. Tab again. Tab in defaults for permission. Tab again, and then 0 space 0. Save and quit. So now this is nice and done. Now we're gonna have to set our time zone. So Arch Linux already comes with most of the major time zones already pre-installed. You just have to link it from one place to a place where the system can read it. So to type that, type in ln space /s, and then we're gonna head to the location where the time zones are installed. So go to user, share, zone info, and then the zone. So if you live in the US, you can type in AM, and then press tab to autocomplete. It's going to autocomplete to America, and then choose the zone name. For example, if you live in New York, type in NEW and tab again to autofill, and then space, and then the location where we're going to link this configuration to. So it's going to be /etc /local time. Done. Now we're going to have to generate the locale. So type in vim etc locale.gen. In here, search for the locale that you want to install. For example, I'm going to install English US. So I'm going to search for that. It's all the way down here. Once you find it, you want to uncomment both the UTF and the ISO. So these are uncommented now. Then save and exit. Now type in locale/gen. What this command is going to do is going to read through this file. It's going to see the locales that you uncommented, and it's going to install these for you. Done. Now we're gonna have to set a couple configurations. First, we're gonna have to type in the locale and a config file. So type in echo, and then in quotes, type in lang equals to the locale. So mine is gonna be English underscore US dot UTF/8. Close the quotes, and then we're gonna put this in etc locale.conf. Done. Now I'm gonna have to give the system a name. So type in echo again, in quotes, put in the machine name. I'm gonna name this Gigachad. Close this, and I'm gonna put this into etc hostname. This is important. Will be the name what other device gonna discover this machine as. So for example, in your router at home, you're gonna see Gigachad if this machine is gonna show up in there. Now what we're gonna have to do is edit the loopback devices. We're gonna have to edit another file, vim etc host. Make a new line. We're gonna make the localhost loopback. So 127.0.0.1 tab localhost, and then I'm gonna make the same thing for the IPv6 localhost, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for the DNS loopback. So 127.0.1.1 tab, then type in arch.local domain, tab again, in quotes the machine name. That's gonna be Giga Arch. Close it, save and exit, nice and done. Now we're gonna have to give it a root password. So pass wd, give it a new password. And we're gonna make a new user because we don't want to be using root all the time. So user add /m capital G, and then choose the group. I'm gonna put this in the wheel group, space /s, define the shell. I'm gonna choose /bin bash for my preferred shell, and then give this user a name. So I'm gonna name this user Bill. Nice and done. Now I'm gonna give this user a password. So pass wd Bill, type in a new password. Now we're gonna have to give this user sudo privileges. So to do that, we're gonna have to enable sudo privileges for the wheel group. So we're gonna have to edit the sudoers file. So vim etc sudoers, enter, search for wheel, and you'll see here it says uncomment to allow members of the wheel group to execute any command. So you want to uncomment that, save and exit. Now we're going to install some necessary packages, or what you could consider as drivers. So type in pacman /S. We're going to need AFI boot manager. Now we're going to need Intel ucode, which is like security patches for Intel processors. If you have AMD processor, you can use AMD ucode instead. And then network manager. This will give us network abilities. And then network /manager /applet. And if your PC has a Wi-Fi card and you want to enable Wi-Fi, you're gonna need wireless _tools. And you're also gonna need WPA supplicant. But I don't have Wi-Fi in this machine, so I'm not gonna need these. So I'm gonna go ahead and install these. Say yes. Now it's installed. Now we're gonna install the bootloader. We're gonna use systemd on bootloader because it's already pre-installed, it's lightweight, and it works flawlessly. So type in boot ctl /path equals to /boot space install. Done. It's that quick. We got a bootloader nice and installed. Now we just have to configure this bootloader to load our Arch install. So first we're gonna make a boot entry. So we're gonna make a new file at /boot loader entries, and then give it a name. I'm just gonna name this default.conf, and then in here you're gonna specify some things for the bootloader. So title, this can be whatever you want. I'm gonna name this Gigachad. This will be the name that you will see if you were to have multiple operating systems and you want to give them a specific name so you know what you're booting into. And then type in Linux, tab /VM Linux /Linux. Make a new line, type init rd, tab /. If you install the ucodes for your processor, you can type them in here. So /entel /ucode.img, and then type init rd again. And in here, we're gonna put in the init ram fs /linux.image. Now the last thing we're gonna put is your root or home drive. So type options root equals to /dev /your home partition. So mine is gonna be sda2 space rw for read write. Now you're gonna know one thing here. This will work perfectly fine, but you're gonna be swapping drives quite often. You might run into issues where the drive names is gonna change, and then your system won't be able to boot. So what you can actually do, instead of using a generic drive location like /dev/SDA, you could actually use the UUID, because the UUID won't change no matter how many times you can swap the drive, or if you add more drives in the future. Actually, I can show you that. So if you want to use the UUID instead of the generic drive location, there's one command for that. Type in echo space in quotes options root equals in caps part UUID equals to $ open a bracket PLK ID space -s in caps part UUID -o space value /dev/ your home drive. So mine's gonna be SDA2, and then you close this space RW, then you close the quotes, and then we're gonna put this into /boot loader entries, and then the entry that we made, mine is named default.conf. Notice in here I'm using 2 of these arrows. The reason is if you use 1 arrow it will override the entire file, but if you use 2 arrows it will just add a new line, and you don't want to override the entire file. And now we can take a look at the file. So in boot loader entries default, open that, and you can see here it says instead of using the generic drive location, we are using the UUID. So the UUID won't change no matter what, unless you reformat the drive. So now we can delete our older entry. So this is nice and done. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it's nice to have. Now we made a new bootloader config. We're gonna have to tell the bootloader to use it. So we're gonna have to edit one file. It's gonna be in bootloader loader.conf. Press enter, make a new line, type in default for the default boot space, and then the file where you made the boot entry. Mine is gonna be default.conf. Save and exit. Nice and done. One more thing I want to add, if you want to enable 32-bit packages, so we're gonna have to edit one file on etc/pacman.conf. Type enter, search for multi-lib, that is testing, and that is stable branch. Go for the stable branch, remove the comments for both of these lines, save and exit, and then type in pacman/syy, done. Now you also have 32-bit packages. Now we are pretty much done at this point. We have a fully running Arch install. All we gotta do is get some packages running and install a graphical interface. The first thing I'm gonna do is install graphics drivers. So I'm gonna type in pacman/S, and then you can choose your Java package. Now here's where your install is gonna differ a little bit from mine. It depends on what system you have and what graphics card you have. For most people, you only need to install one package. Type in xf86/video and / the graphics card you have. For example, if you have Intel, type in Intel. If you have AMD, type in AMD. One exception to this is if you have an NVIDIA driver, then you have to install different packages. But you can look up how to install NVIDIA drivers on the Arch Rookie. I'm gonna have this link below. Actually, if you want, you can look through the packages and see what kind of video drivers that are available. And you can see here we have AMD GPU, we have ATI for older GPUs, we have Intel. There's also the NuoVio driver. I have no idea how to actually pronounce it correctly, but it's an open source driver for NVIDIA cards. And you also have VMware and QXL for virtual machines. So since I'm a virtual machine, I'm gonna go with VMware. I'm gonna remove the other S so I can actually install it. Nice and done. Now we got a GPU drivers. Now we're gonna need some audio drivers. So for most people, this driver should work just fine right out the gate. So type in pulse audio /ALSA, ALSA utils, ALSA/firmware. This will get the audio drivers and also the graphical controls for the audio. So yes to that. Now the last thing you're gonna have to choose is your graphical interface or your window manager. This depends on you. You can go out and research different window managers and different graphical interfaces, and you can pick and choose what you like. But the easiest one to install is Plasma, because there is a Plasma package that contains all the necessary basic drivers and utilities, such as Bluetooth drivers, Bluetooth utilities, the Wi-Fi menu, so like all the basic stuff here and there. So if you don't want to actually specify every single program and every single package you want to be installed, you can just install Plasma and it will install most of these for you. So type in pacman/S Plasma and then space, and then you can add any other packages that you want to be installed. So for example, you may want a terminal, so I'm gonna use Xterm. You may want a browser, type in Firefox. So don't worry about this too much. All that matters is that you have a terminal, and then you can launch the terminal and then install more packages as you want. So as you can see, this will go ahead and install 46 different packages. So you don't have to go manually and look for every single utility and tool that you need, which is very important, especially if you are new to Linux, because most likely you're not going to know what packages you need. Press enter for all these, press enter for default, again enter for default, enter for default, and then it will go ahead and download and install all these packages and dependencies for you. And the last step after this is we're gonna have to enable some packages to auto start when the system starts up. So for that, type in systemctl enable. You want to enable network manager. So your network starts up when the system starts up, and you want to enable SDDM. This will enable your display manager, and this will automate the system booting up to the login screen. One thing you may want to enable if you have an SSD, you want to enable fstrim.timer. This will enable the auto trim feature on your SSD to keep things running nice and smooth. Enable those. Now we're pretty much done. So exit and then reboot the system. Now we went to the login screen. You can put in the password that you set for this user. Fix the resolution. Perfect. Now we got Arch Phoenix successfully installed with the KDE Plasma interface. And then from here, you can go ahead and customize everything you want. For example, one thing that you may want to go ahead and install is a file browser, because Plasma for some reason does not come with a default file browser. So to do that is quite simple. I'm going to use sudo pacman/S. I'm going to use, for example, Dolphin. Type in your password. Say yes. Done. Now if I search this up, we get a file browser. It's as simple as that. And that's the beauty of Arch, is you customize it along the way. You choose what packages, you choose what's your file browser, and then you can add or remove core things and make it completely and truly unique to your needs. Alright, now that we are up and running, I think I'm going to end the video here. Expect to see a lot more Linux content from me in the future, and I hope that you learned something useful along the way. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See ya.